Hey, everybody out there in the podcastiverse. Let's call it that. I think I just coined that, the podcastiverse.
I've never heard that actually. That's going to catch on.
Out of the hundreds of millions of podcasts out there, I think it's the first time anybody's coined the term podcastiverse.
Let's call it that. That's great.
So, yeah, welcome back to the show, the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I appreciate you all listening in. We got a good episode for you today and some practical, tactical stuff that I think you all can start implementing immediately. But first, Mike, Dad, hey, welcome.
Yes, son, Ethan, thanks. It's great to be here in the podcastiverse. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. It's actually been several episodes since we've been back in the quote-unquote studio together. So I missed you on this show.
Thank you. I miss doing this. This is a lot of fun.
Well, good. Then let's have some more fun.
Okay.
Before we jump in today, believe it or not, folks, we have a sponsor of this podcast, an official sponsor. And we need you to hear about it, of course. And our sponsor is the Mind and Heart University app. Mike, tell everybody about the MHU, or Mind and Heart University, this cool thing that has been in the lab for a while.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. We've been working on this for a long time, and we're basically partnering with some folks, and we are building a web-based program and mobile app that really is like having a Nash Consulting consultant right there in your pocket or on your laptop or, with you whenever you need it. It's just a really cool version of much of what we do as a company right there in a web-based program and on a phone app. It includes tons of videos of our Managing with Mind and Heart workshop series, really good discussion questions and prompts for working on applying all those skills to yourself or your team. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. There's all of our podcasts and lots of our blogs and things like that are in there and organized in real cool ways. We've got some quizzes, or not quizzes, sorry, these surveys that are really cool tools for managers to be able to get some feedback about how they're doing from their team or assess how healthy their executive team is. There's manager guides in there. There's some options for a lot of other cool stuff. I won't go through all the features, but this is a program that's been in the works for a long time, and we are hoping to roll it out really soon. And in fact, we would encourage folks to go to our website, and if you look on the top menu there, you're going to see a clickable section called the app, and you go in there and read about it. And we would actually encourage you to, if you're interested in just learning more about this, scroll down to the bottom and throw in your email address, and we'll let you know when it's ready for launch.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I will link to the page in the show notes so you can go check it out, read more about it. Again, get on the mailing list so you'll be the first to know when it releases, which again will happen very soon. But folks, we're really, really excited about this. I mean, a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears have gone into it. Okay, maybe not blood, but sweat and tears, most likely. And look, at the end of the day, however self-serving this sounds, we really believe in what we're offering here. And, we've seen the impact that we've had on leaders and then the downstream impact that has had on the people they manage and lead. I mean, we really believe that leadership skills is the North Star for any organization, as well as the North Star for, being an awesome manager that builds morale, engagement, and improves the well-being of those that you lead and manage. So this app is our attempt to make this more accessible to everybody and having kind of our materials compiled together for you in an organized way. And like you said, Mike, it's like having a consultant in your pocket as you're managing people and dealing with situations and all that stuff. So we're excited about it. Enough said. That's our sponsor. I hope you like it. Right. Well, and now, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody out there, welcome to the actual topic for today. Now we're going to actually get going. Let me start here. Why do meetings matter? Maybe a silly question, but I actually think it's worth diving into a bit. Why do they matter?
Yeah, not a silly question. I mean, isn't it? It's so common to hear people out there in the business world just bemoan meetings, right? I hate meetings. I don't want to have a meeting. We don't need more meeting. Blah blah blah. And
they're useless, right? We don't get anything done. It's a waste of time. I mean, this is real common.
It really is, and I don't disagree with the general sentiment, right? I mean, they can really suck your soul, right? I mean, they can take all your time. I mean, I've seen one of the main reasons I've seen managers struggle with managing is they just literally don't have time to manage because many of them are in meetings, back-to-back meetings constantly. And when you talk to these folks, and I've been there, you've been there, often they don't even feel like 80% of the time they spend in meetings is even worth it. It's a waste of time. Nothing's accomplished. So I get it. I get that frustration. And yet, the knee-jerk reaction to that is, and I did work with an organization once who had said, we are actually going to create a no meeting organization. We're just not going to have meetings because they're so terrible, et cetera. And that's a really bad idea. I mean, I guess I'll just toss this back to you, Ethan. Think about in a perfect world, when meetings are run well, what are the things that we can do and the things that we get that we can't get any other way? What occurs to you when I ask you that question?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I'm sure somebody can make the case that these things could be done without meetings, but I don't know if they'd be done as well or as effectively. But I think, when meetings are intentionally designed, well done, how about just team building, right? Yep. And I don't mean, trust falls in human pyramids. If that's what you want to do and your team's into that, go for it. But literally connection with other human beings, in which we learn about each other. We actually start to build psychological safety by being in meetings together. It's where, decisions can be made, talked about, brainstormed on, where people have an opportunity to actually disagree and build trust and psychological safety through the process of navigating conflict and disagreement with each other. You're spending time communicating information in a way that's immediate and people can give real-time feedback and real-time questions and things like that. And I could keep going. In fact, why don't you add to this list if you have more?
That's a great list. And when you think about it, Ethan, almost everything you said literally cannot happen outside of a meeting, right? Like, think about a group of 5 people who decide to collaborate on something. How are they going to do that without, quote, meeting together, right? They could maybe do it through email, but that's a whole nother topic. And we don't advocate a lot of, email meetings. There's certain things that can be done that way. But yeah, you mentioned team building, collaboration, problem solving, deciding. When you get a group of 8 people that want to sit together or get together and, for example, work on a consensus on something or do some kind of decision making, that's called a meeting. And I just think that these, one way to look at it, and we say this a lot in our trainings, is that meetings in many ways are kind of the heart of an organization. It's where things actually happen. It's where the collaboration and the decision making and the team building and becoming a healthy organization, much of that happens right there in meetings. If, as you caveated, if they're done well, right? If they're done well. So they're really important, and yet they can really detract from the health of an organization when they're not done well. And I've talked about this before, and we also talk about this in training. The cool thing about meetings is they're kind of a microcosm of the organization in general. You can go to a meeting and watch how things happen, the respect level, the who uses their time, who doesn't, how they decide, or if they just spin around on decisions and not decide. You can actually see the culture of an organization right there in the meeting. And the cool thing about that is if you improve meetings and that becomes sort of a permanent fix in how people meet, that can leak out and actually impact the health of the organization.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, we've talked about meetings before on this podcast. We have several episodes on those, and we will link to those in the show notes for you to go back and check them out. Additionally, we have a effective and enjoyable meetings guidebook that we've put together. That's free. If you'd like that guidebook, just email us, contact@nashconsulting.com. But one thing you and I have talked about before is just, some general observations that we've had and other team members of ours have had working with different teams, leadership teams. And, some observations that are not that uncommon is that, we'll observe a team that kind of really is in a meeting together and they do a lot of talking about decisions, spinning around decisions, but not a lot of decision making, or it's unclear if decisions were made. And so people walk away not executing on things that people thought they were supposed to be executing on. And, we have a tool that when we've helped teams implement this tool, just this simple tool starts to change that. Things start to get done, decisions start to get made, projects that were being stalled for months and years get going and make progress. Right? There's more clarity about who's doing what. And so let's introduce this tool, which is called what we just called
ABCDs.
ABCD. All right, that should be easy for you to remember. Just remember ABCD. ABCD. That's kind of fun to say, actually.
Yeah. ABCD. Okay.
Great.
How do you spell it? What's the spelling of that acronym?
ABCD. And so this is what it is.
There you go.
Our meetings, ABCDs. And I want to have you introduce this concept just at a high level. What are the ABCDs of meetings?
ABCD is the very last section of your agenda. And we'll talk about agendas next episode, but basically you end your meetings, and in many meetings, it actually is written on the agenda, ABCD, and it's spelled out. A stands for action items. We'll go through these in a moment. B stands for by whens and by whom. C stands for communication items, and D stands for decisions. And the basic idea is these are just prompts. These are if you're committed to intentionally mentioning, identifying the A, the B, the C, and the D at the end of every meeting, what it does is, at the very least, it kind of forces you right there to the meeting to capture those things. Wherein, as you're saying, Ethan, in real life, we might have just walked out of the meeting and not had any idea, really, if we've decided or who decided what or who was going to do the thing. So it forces you to identify A, B, C, D at the very least. At the best, it helps you during your meeting because you realize you're going to have to do A, B, C, D at the end of the meeting, right? So you realize during the meeting, for example, you might say, look, we've spun around on this now for 15 minutes and we're ready to move on to the next topic. Did we decide? We're going to have to identify a decision at the end of the meeting. So let's just do it, right? So it's a prompt. It's a reminder. It's just a really good tool to make sure that you're walking out of your meetings and basically being productive.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, this is just, when we're looking at the benefits of this, I know they're implied and we've alluded to them, but it's about clarity, right? It's about clarity, right? If we literally build the ABCD into every single meeting agenda, which we'll actually talk more about meeting agendas in the next episode, but on every meeting agenda, it says at the end of the meeting, last 5 to 10 minutes or so, ABCDs. And what the group does is they stop and they say, okay, are there any action items or decisions? Were there decisions that were made? Right? who's going to take care of the action items, right? Who's going to do them? When are they going to do them? What do we need to communicate about these action items? So I know that wasn't exactly in order, but A, B, C, D. Action items, by when and by whom. Communication items, and decisions that were made, right? And I guarantee if you implement that stuff, there's going to be more clarity and people are going to be a bit more on the same page with what was decided, who's taking care of what, and so on and so forth.
Exactly. And let's go through each really briefly, and then talk a little bit about order, because that can be a little creative. But we start with action items, and this seems so obvious, but keep in mind that the A and the B, right, the action items and the by when and the by whom, those are always connected, right? So, hey, we decided today, right, that Ethan and Hannah are going to work on the XYZ project. They're going to get their draft back to us by the end of this month. Or everybody's going to do some research on that 4th Street project thing, right? All of us in the room here are going to do some work on that and come back to the next meeting with some thoughts on that, right? So action items, who, and then by when and by whom. Always connect those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you take C? Let's talk about the communication items.
Okay. Yeah, and to be redundant here, just so we're really cementing in your minds, again, we've talked about the action items. When are they going to get done and who's getting them done? Let's clarify that. And then we go to our C, our communication items, right? Basically, what do we need to communicate as a result of this meeting or these decisions or action items, right? And the communication piece, it has a few components to it. It is, what is the message that needs to be communicated? Who is going to deliver that message? Is it one person? Is it somebody we're going to talk to after this meeting that's going to do that communication? Do all of us need to go out and communicate it to our teams or our direct reports? All right, so what's the message? Who delivers the message? And then when will the message be delivered? All right, so it's basically the by, when, and by whom of the communication items. And then there is, how will we respond to questions? Which this one I think often gets missed. Right? We talk about who's going to communicate and what needs to get communicated, but then people often have questions. So who do they go to for that? Is there an SPA that they should go to for those questions that we should direct people to? By the way, SPA is single point accountability. We did an episode on that. I'll link to that in the show notes. But again, it is, what is the message? Who delivers the message? When will the message be delivered? How will we respond to questions? Right? And these can just be bullet points that everybody gets after the meeting, so everybody's on the same page, or whatever. But yeah,
a note on that last one. That how will we respond to questions? I've seen that be a sticky point for organizations. One of the best ways to get ahead of that one is to ask yourself at the meeting the why question, because that's very likely going to be the nature of the questions that come later. So, hey, if someone was to ask us, as we're communicating this thing, if someone was to ask us, well, why are we doing that? What's the reason? What would we say? Let's make sure that we in this room are on the same page. In fact, we may even want to write that out. What's the why?
That's brilliant. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've seen multiple times, and I've done this myself, walk away from the meeting very clear on the decision and the message, but everybody in the meeting has a different understanding about why it's happening, and now we've just created more confusion in the organization because everybody's getting a different message in a sense. Right? And I would actually add to talking about the why and making sure that we understand that, I would add the question that will often come up is, what does this mean for me? Right? So if you're making a decision and communicating that, we want to know the why. And how does this personally affect me? What does this mean for my role, my job, my task? Is there any actions that I'm supposed to take? So just thinking about this from the perspective of the people that are going to receive this message. What would you likely need to ask or know when you receive the message or communication about this decision or whatever it is?
Yeah, that's really good. I don't want to belabor this, but man, this communication piece is so important. If you've got a group of 6 executives and you all are going to be communicating this thing, out to their team. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going so far as to have one of the people in the room come back to the next week or to the next meeting with maybe a draft of what is the message, and we can all look at it. We can, do a little bit of tweaking it, and then we have a message that we are really consistent on. So we don't, not to spend too much time on that, but it's just really important that we don't all go out and share our own version of the message and everything is crazy after that.
Well, absolutely. Especially if it's an important decision or communication item or it's somewhat complex, right? Taking that time on the upfront will pay dividends in the long term with the clarity you create. So, all right. So what is the A?
Action items. Who's doing, I'm sorry, action items. What's going to be done outside this meeting?
Exactly. And what's the B?
Who is going to do those things and when will that happen? The by whens and the by whom's.
And the C, which we just discussed, are the communication items, and we're managing that message. What's the message? Who delivers the message? When will the message be delivered? How will we respond to questions? Which leads us to the final one, which is the D, which is decisions. So talk to us about how this one works.
Well, first of all, let's just define it. What did we decide, right? Or, this happens a lot, what did we almost decide and we moved on without actually deciding, so we better just finish that process right now and decide, right? So again, it's a reminder of what we decided to clarify. And the reason we want to do that is because, I actually have seen meetings where decisions were made an hour ago, and then they don't get reviewed at the end of the meeting. And so people lose them. People forget. People don't actually incorporate them, right? So you're going to clarify what was decided, or you're going to prompt yourself to finish that decision-making process that you were almost done with. So it's just really about clarifying the decision, making it really, really clear.
Absolutely.
There's an issue here about order. It's ABCD are in order of ABCD because that's a pretty popular order to put those 4 letters in, right?
True. Pretty common order.
Pretty common order. That's generally the way we learned it. You know what? It's okay not to do it in that order. And frankly, I've seen it be super effective to start with the D, right? This is what we decided. Let's clarify that. And then it's really easy to go back and do action items that maybe are associated with that decision, by whens and by whom, communication, right? So D, A, B, C, right? It could work. DABCA, I guess.
Yeah. I like advocate better, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, in fact, if you think about it, I mean, action items are a decision, right? It's a result of decision. They are the decision. We've decided this, and so now we're going to go do this. So I like that, right? Starting with the D, then maybe going to action items, by when, by who, communication items. So,
yeah. As long as you get to them, as long as you get to all 4. And there'll be times where you don't have anything, right? Do we have any communication items? No. But check in on it anyways. Just keep it as a standard piece of your agenda every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, would you say that every kind of meeting, would benefit from doing the ABCDs towards the end? Or is there maybe a special place for these during special types of meetings?
Not every single meeting, but I would say where an actual written agenda is not necessary for every kind of meeting. I mean, there's lots of meetings that don't need that. I would actually lean toward ABCD, at least visiting it every time. I mean, for example, this might just be a group of 5 of us who are working on a specific issue, a specific process, trying to solve a specific problem. All right. Are there action items? Have we made any decisions? I just think it's worth exploring in most meetings.
Yeah. It's I was actually working with this whole organization on helping them improve their meetings, and we were talking about the ABCD concept, and there was one group or a couple people from this group that were really pushing back that they should do this during every meeting. And one guy said, he's like, "Hey, look at this meeting that I have with my team. Like, this is just a meeting in which we are collaborating on this engineering project or whatever stuff they're doing, right? We're just kind of fixing stuff and getting things sorted out. And I asked them, well, so as a result of this meeting, do you often have to like tell other people things about the changes and stuff you made? It was like, well, yeah. Okay, well, so does that mean like decisions were made during that meeting? That's why you have to communicate it? Well, yeah, I mean, we make decisions about like what we're going to take out and keep in and stuff. And so I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
so those are decisions, right? And don't you want to make sure that people are clear on that?
Mm-hmm.
And, so I agree with you that most meetings, if not all meetings, would benefit at least from checking in, right? Even if there is none, right? At least you've covered that basis. So we're on the same page with that.
Good.
Folks, that's kind of it, right? The ABCDs. It's not super complicated in concept. It does, I find, take a little bit of work to get it implemented and get into a good rhythm with it. Again, we often suggest, hey, the last 5 to 10 minutes of every meeting. I know I've worked with groups that they're like, hey, we took 5 minutes for this, and like it took us 25 minutes to get through them. Right. And that's fine. Okay. So, hey, maybe you spend a little bit more time on this for a while until you start to get conditioned that this is happening during every meeting. And when you're conditioned that the ABCDs are happening during every meeting, you're more likely throughout that meeting to clarify these things along the way and not wait till the very end to be like, oh, shoot, we do have to make a bunch of decisions here. What are we going to communicate? So on and so forth.
Exactly.
So I think you can actually speed up the ABCDs as it starts to get implemented.
Yep.
I don't know. Have you found that 5 to 10 minutes is generally enough for most groups, or it takes a while to warm up to that? Or
I'm just going to repeat what you said. I think when you're first starting out, it can take a long time because we really didn't create action items or we didn't really make decisions. And so now we have to kind of retroactively make that happen. So yeah, it can take a little longer, but when you see it working, it can just be, I've seen it be done in less than a couple minutes because you literally are just clarifying the things that you already said earlier. I was actually in one meeting a couple months ago. As they're making decisions and creating action items throughout their meeting, they're actually writing them up anyways, right in front of the room. So when they get to their ABCDs, it's like, okay, there it is. And they just read it, right? So yeah, it can take minutes. It can take longer if we're not in the habit. But like you said, man, what a great way to make your meetings more effective in general, because who wants to go to meetings where you walk out and no one knows who's doing what and we haven't decided anything? It's like, what a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last thing I'll say is that another benefit of implementing the ABCDs is it clarifies and makes your note-taking process during the meetings easier and actually just way more effective. Right? Some organizations or some teams kind of do the minutes thing, right? Let's kind of take notes of everything that's happening in the meeting. Well, in reality, very few people are going to go back and read the minutes, and they can be frustrating because we can't find what we're looking for. So for most meetings, most teams, most organizations, all you really need for the most part in your notes is these things. What were the action items? Who's taking care of them and by when? What were the communication items? And how are we managing that message? And what decisions were made? Therefore, if somebody missed a meeting, they kind of know what they need to know right there. And they can follow up on pieces to get more clarity. So that's another benefit of that. Yeah.
I was at a meeting one time and there was the note keeper and she was typing, and I swear she was typing the whole time and I couldn't figure out what she was doing. And it turned out it was like a court reporter transcript. Like that's how some people think of their meeting minutes. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if I go back to read the minutes, I just want it to be simple and I want it to be really instructive. ABCD.
That's right. That's right. Beautiful. Well, folks, if there's one thing you take away from this today, it's ABCD. Okay? ABCD. ABCDs. Look, go try this out. Bring it forward to your team and see it work magic. Besides that, folks, thanks for tuning in. Look, if you enjoy this podcast, if you're getting a lot out of this podcast, honestly, the best way you can support us is just subscribing. Subscribing helps other people find the podcast. So, go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and hit that subscribe button and that would be doing us a big favor. So thank you very much. And we will see you for next episode, where we'll talk more about meeting agendas. So bye for now.